What if I told you that the most unexpected coaching partnership in tennis history was not born out of desperation, but out of a phone call that nobody saw coming? Not a meeting arranged by agents. Not a formal proposal through management. Just Novak Djokovic, one of the greatest tennis players who ever lived, picking up the phone and calling his old rival. The man on the other end of the line had just walked away from professional tennis after the 2024 Paris Olympics. He was barely 2 months removed from his last match as a player. And suddenly the world number one was asking him to step into a completely different role, not as a competitor, but as a teacher. That man was Andy Murray. And what followed was 6 months that tennis will not forget anytime soon. The timing alone tells you everything. Djokovic did not go to an established coach with a long resume of turning around careers. He went to someone who had spent decades standing across the net from him. Someone who had beaten him on the biggest stages. Someone who understood his game from the inside out, not because of scouting reports, but because of hundreds of hours of personal battle at the highest level. The logic was simple. Who better to challenge Djokovic mentally and tactically than the man who had pushed him harder than almost anyone else? Murray accepted. And by November 2024, the two former rivals were working together in the most unusual professional arrangement modern tennis had ever seen. Their debut came at the Australian Open in January 2025, and for a brief, beautiful moment, it looked like the partnership might be something truly special. Djokovic was sharp.
He was motivated.
The fire that had seemed to flicker during parts of the previous season appeared to be back, and people started wondering whether Murray had genuinely unlocked something. Then came the quarterfinal against Carlos Alcaraz, one of the hottest young players on tour, a man who had taken over the #1 ranking and looked like he intended to keep it for a long time. Djokovic beat him.
Cleanly. Convincingly.
And the tennis world sat up and paid attention. But sport has a way of reminding everyone that nothing is ever as simple as it looks. The very next match, the semifinal against Alexander Zverev, ended in a way that nobody wanted. Djokovic was forced to retire mid-match with a leg injury. After the rush of the Alcaraz victory, the exit felt brutal. The momentum was gone before it had properly built. The rest of the clay season told a similar story. Monte Carlo brought an early defeat. Madrid brought another. The titles that Djokovic had spent over 2 decades accumulating with almost mechanical regularity were not coming. For a player of his caliber, a 6-month stretch without a single trophy is not just a dry patch. It is a statement that something is not working. The results were honest about that, even if the relationship between the two men was not the problem. There was a moment of genuine brightness in Miami, where Djokovic reached the Masters final. For a day, it felt like a turning point. Then he ran into Jakub Mensik, a teenager, playing some of the most fearless tennis of the season, and lost. The kind of loss that stings twice, once for the defeat and once for who administered it. By mid-May 2025, the decision had been made. 12 days before Roland Garros was scheduled to begin, Djokovic and Murray sat down together and agreed to close this chapter. The timing raised eyebrows across the tennis world. Ending a coaching partnership less than 2 weeks before a Grand Slam is not a move that suggests everything is fine. But both men were consistent and dignified in how they described what had happened. There was no dramatic falling out. No explosive argument behind closed doors. Two professionals who respected each other deeply had simply reached the limit of what they could give each other, and they both knew it. Djokovic spoke about it with genuine warmth. He talked about enjoying the process, about deepening a friendship that had already survived decades of fierce competition, about both of them arriving at the same conclusion simultaneously without one side pushing and the other resisting. Murray echoed the same sentiment. The language from both camps was the same: mutual, respectful, honest. Then the outside voices started. French tennis journalist Frédéric Verdier gave an interview to We Love Tennis and made a claim that detonated across social media within hours. He stated that Murray had been earning $100,000 per week throughout the collaboration. 10 weeks of coaching, $1 million total. He said it with a level of certainty that made it sound like established fact. The reaction was exactly what you would expect: shock, outrage, debate, and a flood of commentary from people who had never coached a professional tennis player in their lives, but had very strong opinions about what a fair rate should be. Murray did not take long to respond. He went to his Tennis Forever Instagram profile, saw the claim, and gave it exactly the level of seriousness he felt it deserved. He wrote that he had heard many lies over the course of his career, but this one was firmly in his personal top 5. He followed it with laughing emojis. Not fury, not a legal threat, just a man who had been around long enough to know that certain stories do not deserve anything more than a polite, public dismissal. The rumors around their split had been building for weeks before that moment, filling the gaps with invented drama because the real story, two professionals who tried something bold and decided to move on, did not generate enough outrage on its own. Murray's response made it clear that the avalanche of speculation had very little connection to what had actually happened between them. And now, the story moves forward. Murray has found his next project. His name is Jack Draper, 24 years old, British, and carrying the weight of an entire country's tennis hopes heading into Wimbledon. Murray and Draper are beginning their work together on the grass courts of Eastbourne, with Draper's first match on the schedule against Marcos Giron. Then comes Wimbledon, the tournament where Murray himself once made history. The tournament where an entire nation will be watching to see if the man who understood pressure better than almost anyone can pass that understanding on to the next generation. Murray has already said publicly that Draper's level has surprised him, that he believes the collaboration can genuinely produce results.
From
someone who never handed out compliments carelessly during his playing days, that means something. One chapter ended quietly in May. Another one is just beginning.